Again, it's another partnership program with the BC Arts Council. And really, it is about creating opportunities for emerging artists from all disciplines. It basically provides that financial assistance for you to create those opportunities for artists from all disciplines and genres. And we really encourage you to engage with artists who are dancers and theater artists. We do see a lot of music come through the program, so that's why we mentioned that. It basically gives those artists the opportunity, those who are starting out early in their career, a chance to work with other presenters and artists in a professional environment. So if you're having them as a warm-up act, great opportunity to connect them with a main stage artist. It helps them reach new audiences, and it gives them practical experience and knowledge about touring and performing in BC. So again, I didn't put it in the chat, but I will do that. The URL for the program is there, where you'll find the guidelines, the application forms, and if you received funding from the program in January, for example, you can get your final report there as well. So who is eligible? For this program, you have to be a nonprofit society, you have to be a community-based performing arts presenter in BC that presents a series or season of live performing arts events that feature professional artists. Those producing companies who present their own works, and this is a very fuzzy area, I know, because sometimes people do both, they're not eligible. So I know we've had a couple questions so far of those companies that do produce their work. We're looking for those presenters who engage with artists who are visiting their community. Arts and cultural festivals are also eligible, but they have to have had at least 1 year before they can submit. And they have to engage professional artists and compensate them by paying fees at industry standards. So we do have a lot of community festivals in the province, but unless they're paying that professional rate to artists, they're not eligible to apply. So really those festivals who are doing that can come to the program and request funding as well. So this is nice because it opens it up to other types of organizations. So you can request up to, and all of our programs, by the way, you don't have to request the full amount. You can request up to a certain amount. So, so $5,000 is the max. Of that, 60% has to be for artist fees and or expenses associated with touring. And what we mean by that is, are you paying travel? Are you paying accommodation? Or are you paying any kind of hospitality? So you can include that in that figure of 60%. So I will look and make sure that you don't fall under 60%. And if you do, I might come back to you and say, here we are, we haven't quite met that 60%. So how can we make that work? Your proposed activity has to happen between September 1st. So it's a little different from CPA to June 30. And you will apply, this is new this year, on June 30. And we've changed it to kind of line up with CPA. This was something in the works for a couple of years, and it's finally happened where we're aligning the two programs. So there's two components, component A or B, and you apply for either one. And component A is about engaging artists, emerging artists, to open for a main stage as part of your series or season or festival. So they would be the opening act for your main stage artists. Or if you're looking to present a group or a showcase of emerging artists, or a special event, a series, or a showcase, or if you're participating in a tour. So that gives a lot of leeway in terms of what you can apply for, which is amazing about this program. Kind of gives you that, like, we're not doing a warm-up, so we could do a series, or we could do a showcase, or we could do a tour. Lots of room there for you to fit in that. So this year, we've actually extended our reach to making all Canadian artists eligible for the program. And the reason for this is some presenters were finding they've already presented a lot of emerging artists from BC, and they want to expand into other parts of Canada and bring artists from away who may be touring here. So that's new this year. They still have to demonstrate competency in their basic artistic practice and be in an early stage of launching a professional career. I'll talk a little bit about how we kind of come to that and how the assessment panel really looks at that. So these artists have reached a critical moment in their career. They want to tour and they want to maximize this opportunity to reach a potential audience and help them propel into the next phase of their career. So when you're thinking about engaging an emerging artist, is this really Does this criteria fit that artist? If you, again, that scenario where you've got a group or a company or a band being presented, it's the majority we look at. So there may be a combination of a group or a company that has not emerging artists as part of it, but as long as the majority are, then we would consider. And so in thinking about that, what the assessment committee does is they look at the artist in terms of, have they won a lot of awards? Are they really recognizable? Do they have a name that's highly commercial? Have they toured extensively? I mean, if they've toured internationally, they toured all across Canada and BC, they wouldn't necessarily be considered an early stage in their career. So they do look at some of those things that are, what makes this, does that really consider them to be an emerging artist if they toured internationally and they've headlined for major festivals? They may have also showcased at many events and be really known in the industries. So you have to consider all of those things when you're engaging artists. The other thing is sometimes with this program, we've seen people think young artists. There's no age on this. There's no definition in age. So we used to have an age. We found the committee got really hung up on age. And yet we had a 14-year-old pianist who was performing at the Vancouver Jazz Festival, so who wasn't eligible. So we started to rethink the age thing because that young person was already establishing a professional career as an artist, but it was an emerging artist. So we took the age out, and we don't want you to get hung up on age, but rather use the definition. And if you're not sure, it's okay to get in touch and ask, would this be considered an emerging artist? Some of them may still be in school. Some of them may still be training, and they're now ready to launch, and they would be eligible for that. So I just want to give you a sense of when the committee looks at that, they sometimes do look at all those other factors, right? Have they toured a lot? Do they have a pretty well-known name? Have they showcased at all these events? Have they won major Juno awards and other things? And if they have, they may not consider them. So really important for you to consider that as well. So really, we're providing them opportunities for those artists. Culturally diverse is really important. Indigenous, here's an opportunity for you to engage them. It's less risky. So what a great opportunity for you to show your programming is diverse, and it is including Indigenous artists, because you are getting quite a lot of their feet covered. So, if you aren't doing that in your regular season, you can use it as an opportunity to do it here. So you don't also have to have them in the same space. That's not a requirement for this program. You can put them on your stage to open up, but you can also put them in a lobby. We've seen people put them outside as part of a series on the grill, music on the grill, for example. In Evergreen, they do outdoor. So it can be something creative. We've even seen the bathroom, which I know sounds absurd, but at the Chan Center, they've had series in the bathroom, so that's really fun. You do have to have them confirmed. So when we say confirmed, you'll see on the form, we've actually listed tentative or confirmed. And the reason we want to know this is it is pretty far out this year. We understand next summer you may still be programming. So we just want to know how things are, where it sits now as we're looking at this to assess it. Is it a tentative or is it a confirmed contract? And because of the long timeline, I believe the committee will give some grace this year in terms of how far out we're asking you to book. So the applicants, you have to still compensate these artists at standard industry rates. So there's where the questions come up is, what does that mean if they're only doing a 15-minute opening act? Again, I think you have to look at your fees, what you're paying main stage, if you're having an opening artist, how much time, are they traveling, all of those factors, but make sure you're not giving them like a $50 honorarium, for example. And if you have questions, I can certainly give you some guidance in terms of the artist and looking at historic information. So if you have questions, get in touch. So one thing about this program is that if you're receiving CPA for the same programming, or you're applying to the BC Arts Council, you're not eligible to apply for it. In other words, there's no sort of double funding available. So we will look at your CPA if you're submitting a CPA to ensure that your Into the Act isn't the same artist, so you're not getting the same funding. and some of those other exclusions, which we do require a budget in there. So just to be aware that some of the other exclusions are like capital expenditures and going to showcase events and those sorts of things. And these are just some of the other, but I highlighted, I guess, in gray, that producing companies. Again, if you're producing your own show, you wouldn't be eligible to apply. So keep that in mind. And also within that programming. So the criteria really has to, your application really has to have that proposal, but that clearly identifies the emerging artists, what you're paying them. So that Excel spreadsheet will capture all of that information. And then the benefit. So that questionnaire, that question piece really gives you the opportunity to talk about, like, why are you doing this programming? What's the benefit to the artist? So this talks about opportunities to work with presenters and other artists. They have access to new audiences and resources. In some cases, I've seen applicants help them produce a stage plot. They help them to do with testimonials for their marketing material. So these are emerging artists who may not have everything put together yet, helps them get tour ready. So they might also capture them on video, and they can provide that video to them for a live performance video. Sometimes it's the networking and support and collaboration with other artists they're working with, helping to get to know some of the presenters. And again, I mentioned that enhancing their tour readiness. So those are just some of the tangible things that you can think about when you're engaging these artists. And then it's, of course, what does it mean to your organization? And again, why are you presenting these artists? So some examples include, you're engaging new audiences and artist development. So these are things we want to know and the committee wants to hear about in that questionnaire piece. And again, that's the opportunity to promote what you do, why you're doing this. And it really is important to keep those artists touring and have emerging artists, because we know that they're the next generation of artists that will be out touring. So the fees, again, I talked about that, but we also look at the current realities of living in BC and the cost of living. So again, not that $50 honorarium, not approaching it like that, but rather that you're giving them a fee that will be fair. And if you have questions about what that looks like, or you're questioning whether the amount you have is enough, I'm happy to help with that, just based on the previous data we have. So the assessment panel is, again, it's the same scenario as CPA. We have me review your application, make sure everything's there, complete and accurate. And it's reviewed by a peer assessment panel. In this case, it's slightly smaller than CPA because we don't tend to get as many applications, but it's the same makeup. We've got presenters, we've got artists and agent managers who sit on that committee and review the applications. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. Last year we had more applications. They look at the applications within that time period. We have a range of expertise on the committee, including those from Indigenous perspectives, and they meet over about 2 days. They really take their time. They do. I'm really impressed with it all the time, that they really do their diligence, and they make sure that they make fair decisions. We do host the meetings online, and then the files that are shared with them are removed following the meeting. On this, the timeline is a little bit similar to CPA. We are actually meeting in early October to review applications. So by the time the CPA is finished, we go right into this. And the reason we do back-to-back is so we can get you the answer in terms of your probably waiting to hear whether you got funding. So as soon as we can, we'll notify you, and then we'll send out your reward or your award if you're successful. So what you want to send with your application, so the application forms, is a biography. This is a little different than CPA. We don't always know who the artist is, because if they are emerging, they may not be well known to everybody. So that's why we require that 250-word bio. A website's great. Any kind of links that you can provide to us is also on the form. It just gives the committee a sense of, they don't know who it is, how to assess that artist. We do ask for a budget for this, so there is a form that gives you a breakdown of the different expenses and different revenue. We don't require you to have a matching revenue, but we like to see it if you do. If you do contribute, it's always nice to know that there's some contribution, even if it's in kind, in the budget. And just to give you that the breakdown of emerging artist fees. So if, for example, you've got 10 people in a group, and you've got one fee listed on your application form, it's always good for us to just know if you're paying each artist. But with the Excel spreadsheet, we can pretty much figure out how it's broken down. And again, that financial statement. So if you don't have it for this year, you can send it for the previous year. So this is because this kind of activity, we do ask you to do within 30 days. But if you've got a if you were funded in January 2023, your final report should come in. And if there's still 1 or 2 shows that you're planning till the end of August, you can just write a projection of your audience. So send your final report in is what I'm saying. If there's any gaps or anything that I need to follow up with you, I will make a note of that. And that's that on Into the Act. I'm just going to stop to share my screen and answer any questions that anyone has about this program. Oh, I've covered it all, I guess. I can only see 4 people right now. I know most people have their, I'll just check. But so I think Shelby's coming on. Did you have a question, Shelby? No, okay.
Not this time, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So both programs, we have a June 30 deadline, and there's no time on that. So, so not to say I'll be sitting at the desk till midnight. If you send it in the evening, I'll just respond to you the following day to say I've got it. And I do make sure everything works. Once you've sent it in, make sure everything's opening properly. Again, over the course of July, August, we'll be reviewing all of the applications to make sure they're all accurate. And we really want you to get the money. We're rooting for you over here, right? So we want to make sure that what we're sending to the committee is complete and it looks great and all of the questions are answered. So Akil, did you have a question?
Yes. Would the funding provided only be allocated towards the artist fees, or like venue rental for the program would also be included?
So in the budget, those are allowable expenses. So you can apply, you can put your budget together and put those expenses in. Again, up to a maximum of $5,000. So there are some items in the budget that we can consider.
Okay.
As long as the 60% is being met for artist fees and or tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And so just to give you again that timeline, we would be looking at applications and then let you know by early October for Into the Act. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, thanks. Just reviewing that as 60% going to the artists. Do we have to specifically account for how we use the remaining 40%? Like normally we've had to sort of allocate other parts of our expenses to things directly related to the emerging artists. Is that still in the case?
Yeah, in the budget. So maybe I'll just bring the budget up so we can have a look at it together, and then it just helps me explain it a little bit more. Just let me get that open. It does give you categories in the, sorry, I'm in the wrong program here. Just get over there. It does give you a, if I can find it here. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and show you this. Share screen. So this is the proposed budget. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So you'll see up here, there's the revenue. So you put your revenues in here. And then what you're going to do in here is you're going to put your fees and then all of your other expenses. So that's how you kind of make up that other 40%. Okay. Is to include your production and your technical, your supplies, materials, your venue costs. or your rental can be included, your promotion marketing, and any other that we haven't thought of to include in this. One thing I'll point out here is you can also apply for curatorial or coordination fees. So it shouldn't be more than 10% of what you're requesting, because that's really standard in terms of funding, but you can include that as well, which is not the case for CPA. CPA is a straight out artist fees. This program does allow you to have those expenses covered in order to realize the program. Does that make sense, Jim? Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. And I'm just going to flip over here. So here again, you're putting your emerging artist in, and then the date. There's a main stage artist they're opening for. We do want to know who they are. And then with a list, if you've presented an artist previously and you're presenting them more than 2 years, you're really going to need to explain why you keep presenting the same artist. And I have to say, it isn't always favorable, because they want to know that you're actually doing more than just presenting the same artist. That artist now becomes a question of, are they really emerging if they keep doing a show in your community the same? So really to keep that in mind, more than 2 years is probably not a good thing in terms of the committee. Then you list your location, your audience. The length of your performance really does make a difference when we look at fee. The artist amount, so that'll all add up with a nice figure at the bottom, so you don't have to do that. And then we ask you for these things like website, Facebook, YouTube, or any other links. And the reason for that is that, again, the committee's not always familiar with your artist. They may have to look at things like YouTube and their website, so it helps them to have that. And then I'm just going to come over to this is where we talked about the benefit. So if you can't fill this out, if you find the Excel spreadsheets hard to do, just attach a Word document. We just really want to know and have you answer those questions. Like, what are the benefits to participating artists? And what is the benefit to your organization as a presenter? And those can be where you speak to the programming and why you're doing this kind of programming and what you hope will be accomplished. One thing to also mention with this program, we are asking for testimonials. So we are asking you in the final report for images. So I didn't talk about that, because we typically, you know, when you're funded, we will send you an email about what's required, but that is also required for this program. And we're going to be requiring that in the future. So if you have somebody who can take photos, it really is amazing, the photos we're getting. It brings it to life. Like, this is all on paper, so it just helps us to have that that little bit of insight into how things go. And your audience, some of the insights we're getting from the testimonials are really fascinating, how people in the community are reacting to what you're doing. Jim, did you have another question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to do with the grant amount. I'm really happy to see that you're expanding the geographical allowances, but I was just wondering if, especially with CPA, the fact that you're bumping Canadian artists from 30% to 50%, does that mean that there's going to be more funds available in total, or is it just going to be sort of spread around differently?
I can
Go
answer
ahead,
that.
Jane. Sure.
This year, actually, Into the Act is going to be much better supported due to historic funds for some aspiring and emerging artist programs through BCTC that weren't delivered as planned due to COVID. So actually our Into the Act fund this year is double what it normally is. So that's good news, but that's just this 1 year. And then with CPA, we are looking for an increase. We didn't get an increase for this year, but we're actually putting together right now an advocacy document to submit to BC Arts Council to get an increase for next year. And the other thing that we want to do is, and I think I might have mentioned this on a town hall, but the levels of community presenters being capped at 10,000 and key presenters at 15. Those levels have stayed the same for the last 10 years. And as we all know, the cost of everything has gone up considerably in BC. So what we want to do is increase those caps. But we don't want to do that without an increase in the overall amount. So the idea is to secure an increase in CPA for next year and into the Act, and then increase those amounts. And the idea of increasing the Canadian artist allowance is we are aware that that will lead to an increased amount that's requested. And it is true that we have not had an increase this year. So some people, unfortunately, will be disappointed. But that shortfall will help us in our advocacy efforts to increase the amount. So we're playing the long game, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we hope those testimonials and telling the story a little bit more will also help that. Provide better insight into the what really happens. So does anybody have any other questions about Into the Act? No? Okay. Well, the information is there on our website, but I also encourage you, if you have questions, please get in touch. Shelby, I will give you a call. We can chat through your questions as well. And yeah, the deadline again is June 30th. So expect to receive applications over the next few weeks. We'll be looking at those.
Great. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you,
Diane.
everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.